In the annals of military history, few names shine as brightly as Henri de la Tour d'Auvergne, Viscount de Turenne. By 1674, Turenne was already a legend, a marshal of France, the king's most trusted general, and a master of strategy and battlefield psychology. He inspired his troops and terrified his enemies, defending France's borders against a powerful coalition. That year, the Franco-Dutch War escalated. France now faced not just the Dutch, but a formidable alliance including the Holy Roman Empire. Turenne was stationed on the Rhine, tasked with defending Alsace against a massive imperial army led by Alexander von Bournonville. Outnumbered and facing what seemed like certain defeat, Turenne saw opportunity where others saw disaster. He was famous for calculated risks, speed and deception, outthinking rather than overpowering his foes. His soldiers trusted him, knowing he demanded much but never wasted their lives. This bond allowed him to ask for extraordinary feats of endurance and bravery. The campaign we'll explore, Turenne's winter campaign of 1674-75, became a textbook example of maneuver warfare. It's a story of how a brilliant commander overcame impossible odds through strategic genius. We'll examine the context of the Franco-Dutch War, the key battles, and Turenne's audacious plan. We'll follow his army's grueling march and witness the decisive actions that saved Alsace. Turenne's campaign would be studied by military leaders for centuries, including Napoleon himself. His legacy proved that bold thinking and decisive action can change the course of history. Let's begin the story of Turenne's greatest triumph. The Franco-Dutch War began in 1672, driven by King Louis XIV's ambition to punish the Dutch Republic and expand French power. The French invasion was swift, nearly toppling the Dutch until the Dutch opened their dikes, flooding the land and halting the advance. This desperate act bought time for the Dutch to rally and seek allies. Soon, the war expanded. The Holy Roman Empire, Spain and Brandenburg Prussia joined the Dutch, turning the conflict into a major European war. The focus shifted to the Rhine frontier, especially Alsace, a vital province for both sides. For France, holding Alsace protected its eastern border. For the coalition, capturing it opened a path into France. The Holy Roman Empire, under Bournonville, gathered a formidable army east of the Rhine in 1674. Their goal, cross the river, seize Alsace, and establish winter quarters for a spring invasion. Turenne was given command of the army of the Rhine, but his forces were outnumbered at least 2-1. The French court urged caution, retreat if necessary, preserve the army, but Turenne knew a passive defense meant slow defeat. He believed only bold offense could save Alsace. He would use his army's mobility and his own cunning to strike where the enemy least expected. The stage was set for a campaign that would test every ounce of Turenne's skill. The fate of France's eastern frontier hung in the balance. Turenne was ready to defy the odds. Turenne opened the 1674 campaign with bold initiative. He crossed the Rhine at Philipsburg, aiming to disrupt the enemy before they could unite. This was classic Turenne, audacious, swift, and designed to keep the enemy off balance. At Sinzheim, he faced Imperial forces under the Duke of Lorraine and Count Caprara. Outnumbered, Turenne attacked immediately, winning a hard-fought victory but at high cost. The main Imperial army remained intact, and Turenne lacked supplies to hold ground east of the Rhine. Forced to retreat, he ordered the devastation of the Palatinate, burning towns and crops to deny resources to the enemy. This brutal tactic was effective, but left a dark stain on his legacy. By autumn, the full Imperial army crossed the Rhine, capturing Strasbourg and spreading across Alsace. Paris ordered Turenne to retreat into Lorraine and abandon Alsace for the winter, but Turenne refused to give up. With his back to the wall, he began to devise a plan of incredible daring. The campaign was about to take a dramatic turn. Turenne's resolve would soon be tested as never before. The fate of Alsace and France rested on his next move. The Battle of Sinzheim, June 1674, showcased Turenne's philosophy, speed, and aggression. Learning of a nearby Imperial force, he struck first, marching rapidly to catch them off guard. The enemy held a strong defensive position on a plateau, protected by a river and steep slopes. Turenne saw a tactical puzzle, not an obstacle. He scouted the lines himself, spotting a weakness on the enemy's right flank. Instead of a frontal assault, he fixed the enemy's attention with a direct attack while leading a flanking column through an unguarded ford. The surprise attack threw the Imperials into chaos. Fierce fighting raged in gardens, the abbey, and the streets of Sinzheim. Turenne's presence inspired his troops, and after hours of brutal combat, the Imperial line broke. the French won a significant tactical victory, forcing the enemy to retreat. But the victory was costly, and Turenne's army was too exhausted to pursue. Sinzheim was a demonstration of Turenne's genius, but the war for Alsace was far from over. The campaign would demand even greater audacity. Turenne's next moves would decide the fate of the region. The real test was yet to come. After a summer of maneuvering and devastation, the main imperial army crossed the Rhine in force. By October 1674, Turenne faced over 35,000 enemy troops near Ensheim, with only 22,000 of his own. Paris urged retreat, fearing disaster, but Turenne refused to abandon Alsace. The battlefield was a muddy, flat plain, limiting cavalry and favoring defense. Bournonville, the imperial commander, waited for Turenne to attack, confident in his numbers. Turenne planned a flanking maneuver, hoping to envelop the enemy's right, but the terrain and fog turned the battle into a confused, brutal slog. The French flanking attack stalled, and the fighting devolved into bloody infantry clashes. After hours of carnage, the battle ended in stalemate. Turenne held the field, but his army was battered. The imperial threat remained, and Alsace's fate was still uncertain. Turenne needed a new plan, one that would defy all expectations. The stage was set for his boldest gamble yet. After Ensheim, the Imperials settled into winter quarters, convinced the campaign was over. In the 17th century, winter meant armies stopped fighting. Cold, snow, and lack of supplies made operations nearly impossible. The French court ordered Turenne to retreat, but he had other ideas. If the Imperials wintered in Alsace, they'd be poised to invade France in spring. Turenne conceived a plan so audacious it seemed madness. He would vanish, feigning retreat, then secretly march his army south behind the Vosges mountains. The goal: emerge behind enemy lines, attack their scattered winter quarters, and drive them out of Alsace. The plan demanded total secrecy and superhuman endurance from his troops. In late November 1674, Turenne put his plan into motion, pulling back, spreading false reports, and convincing the enemy he'd retreated. The deception worked. The Imperials relaxed. Meanwhile, Turenne led his army south, beginning a grueling march through the snowbound Vosges. It was a logistical nightmare and a huge gamble. But Turenne was betting everything on surprise. The Great Winter Campaign had begun. The fate of Alsace would be decided in the snows of the Vosges. The march through the Vosges was the heart of Turenne's plan, a test of leadership, logistics, and sheer willpower. In late November, the French army vanished from enemy sight, marching south behind the mountains. The conditions were brutal: icy passes, deep snow, and freezing winds. Soldiers dragged cannons and supplies up treacherous slopes, many poorly equipped for the cold. Turenne shared their hardships, marching and sleeping alongside his men, forging unbreakable loyalty. He split the army into columns, each taking a different route to maintain secrecy and ease congestion. The Vosges acted as a curtain, hiding their movements. For a month, the Imperials remained oblivious, believing Turenne was far away in Lorraine. On December 27, 1674, the first French units emerged near Belfort, having crossed the impassable mountains undetected. It was a stunning achievement of endurance and deception. Turenne had outmaneuvered his enemy completely. Now, with his army concentrated and the enemy scattered, he was ready to strike. The decisive phase of the campaign was about to begin. Turenne's bold gamble was about to pay off. Emerging from the Vosges, Turenne wasted no time. He struck the southernmost imperial garrisons, catching them by surprise and spreading panic. Bournonville scrambled to regroup near Colmar, but Turenne used feints and deception to keep him guessing. While the Imperials prepared for battle at Colmar, Turenne swung his main force west toward Turkheim, aiming for the enemy's flank. On January 5, 1675, at Turkheim, Turenne faced a strong Imperial position. Outnumbered, he sent a detachment on a flanking march through the hills, storming the town and unraveling the enemy's line. The surprise attack shattered Imperial morale. Their army broke and retreated. The Battle of Turkheim ended the Imperial invasion of Alsace. Though casualties were light, the psychological blow was devastating. Within days, the entire Imperial army retreated across the Rhine. With a smaller force, Turenne had achieved a stunning strategic victory. Through maneuver and deception, he cleared French soil in the dead of winter. Turenne's masterpiece was complete. Turenne's winter campaign secured his place among history's greatest commanders. With a smaller, battered army, he saved Alsace and outwitted a larger foe. His victory was won not by brute force, but by strategy, maneuver, and deception. Turenne's campaign became a model for future generations. Admired by Frederick the Great and Napoleon, he proved that bold thinking and decisive action could change the course of war, yet his legacy is complex. The devastation of the Palatinate showed the brutal side of 17th century warfare. Even a genius could be responsible for great cruelty. Still, the Winter Campaign remains a high point of military artistry, a timeless story of triumph against the odds. Turenne's life ended months later, but his legacy endured. He redefined military strategy, setting a benchmark for all who followed. Turenne's name became synonymous with the art of war.